Good day, everybody. Welcome to FMA Discussion. This is episode 382, and tonight we're going to be talking about two things with folks. We're going to be talking about the future. We're going to finish that previous episode on the future of Arnis, and then we're going to talk about what is Arnis. What is the perception from everybody from the lens of is it a standalone program or adjunct program, and so forth and so on, and talking about how the future could be affected by that, but a perception of what is Marnie. So the first guest will be Chris Chu and Noah King from the first episode with Datu, and then we're going to be jumping in at 8:40. We'll be having Chad Bailey and Ty Bonding coming on at 8:40. So without further ado, here it is Datu Tim, Chris Chu, and Noah King.
How we all doing?
Hey guys, thank you. I'm so glad that Datu called me. Thank you. So folks are watching a little screw up. I'm in New Mexico with Brian, and somehow, some shape, way, or form, I temporarily had a momentary lapse of reason for getting to visit 12 time difference.
Hey, what time is it there right now for you?
It is 6:09.
So you're 2 hours behind. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So last episode, we were pretty much talking about the future. However, we kind of incidentally segue into the perception of what is Marnice. But for initial purposes now, let's continue on the future, knowing that we're going to kind of taper off into the perception of Marnice. So from the last episode, there was some really good feedback, and the good feedback was particularly from all three of you, but folks were really excited to hear from the younger generation guys here, that being Noah King and Chris Chu. So did you guys get any feedback? So Chris Chu, what feedback did you get from the episode?
I got a lot of great feedback. I got a lot of great just people supporting, liking what I'm saying, seeing through the lenses that I was trying to see through as well. And really people supporting the idea that I'm trying to create I'm trying to understand Professor before I start acting like I know his wishes, because I never met the man. So it would be wrong of me to say I know what he wants until I get a better understanding of who he is. And a lot of people like that. And then, I got messages from GM Brian, GM Dan, my dad, several other people who have now become friends. Kurt, you reach out to me. Another guy, one of Master Roland Rivera's students, Christian, he reached out to me. He's actually really cool about him. He's a 23-year-old modern Arnis practitioner, which I'm like, cool. There's more young guys doing this.
Oh, fantastic. Okay.
What?
Noah, feedback for you.
I got a lot of feedback, actually, more than I thought I'd get, from family and friends and from people I don't know.
You had the whole King clan watching.
I know, yeah. I had almost the whole family watching. Those that know what internet is.
Yeah, that was great.
A lot of Facebook friend requests. Don't send me requests on here. Send it to my Instagram.
Okay, see that? FMA discussion, where they do. They make folks known, right?
Yeah.
So, Datu, feedback from your end.
I got a bunch of phone calls, and personally, I didn't like the show initially because we kind of went off the path about what is modern Arnis, so we're talking about his future.
Yeah.
But I got a lot of feedback on that, and good stuff. And I wanted to bring up something because some other people made some comments similar to Chris about how did people not know each other back then. And I just want to share just a couple different things. So, Chris, when were you born?
I was told 1997.
You were told 19.
I wasn't. I don't know.
I was told.
Okay. All right. Okay. So you're born in 97. All right. So, I just want to talk about some things back then, which a lot of people take for granted now. Back then, less than 30% of people had cell phones. Cell phones with internet didn't start until 91. Facebook, which was a college thing, was 2004, and then he opened up to the market. YouTube was created in 2005. Instagram 2010. None of this stuff was around when Remy was alive.
Yeah.
Exactly.
When it came for us communicating with each other, it was snail mail.
You guys said
carrier pigeons.
Messenger pigeons.
You know, so I mean, it was dial-up internet back then. Which, if someone in the house picked up your phone while you're on the internet, it disconnected your.
Remember those days.
And the thing was, Modern Arnis didn't have a database. Some of the camp hosts didn't do a great job of getting information out. Terry Warham was really good because he actually shared the mailing list of every camp that he hosted with everybody who attended. But when you made the comment about, you know, how did people not know your father back then if they were the East Coast director? You know, for the most part, no one knew anybody unless they were either a seminar or a camp host, because then your name would show up in Black Belt magazine if you did the ad and if you traveled. And back then, most people didn't travel.
Yeah.
okay.
A lot of people were regional. Like I said, and, you know, you look at it, everyone, I don't want to say, I generally talk about the norms, not the exception. The norm for Modern Arnis, people weren't doing it as a standalone program. So they were always, if they were doing martial arts, they had to deal with their responsibilities of their primary art. And if they were the head of the school, they'd run their schools. So for karate, taekwondo, fill in the blank, and they wouldn't necessarily work on databases and stuff like that. Remy's first website was 98. And I had the Can-Am website in 99. There still wasn't much out there. And I just want, you know, for those who are listening and stuff, there's a lot of people who, and even today, there's people I bump into that have been doing the art just as long as me, maybe longer, that I never came across. And now we've had full access of the internet, Facebook, Instagram, and all the other social media things. And there's still a lot of, I don't want to say hermits, but some people really don't really interact on the internet that way. So, it was a different time, and that led into a couple things, also misnomers, because if you didn't have that way to communicate now, I mean, look what we're doing today. This wasn't out there. Like I said, YouTube didn't start till 2005. So how much bigger would Remy be right now if he was with us today?
Be a superstar.
He'd be a freaking juggernaut. I mean, he was already, but my God, he did that with just people looking at Black Belt magazine and Inside Kung Fu.
Yeah.
But I don't want to take away, but with some of the feedback, people had asked me those questions. How come people didn't know each other? You know, not many of us went around and traveled to all the seminars. I mean, I did 30 camps. I can't figure out how many seminars I did. Every weekend I had a tank of gas and a fistful of dollars. I was on the road. So, but, you know, like I said, it was a different era. And when we were talking about that, I just want to put things in proper the concept perspective, because, you know, we had a lot of different challenges back then.
Yeah.
I have an idea, based on what you're saying, for the this is kind of directed both for Noah and Chris. As far as the future lens, and now this could be multi-faceted in where it could accomplish a few objectives. One, an actual website, or a website that is dedicated to Arnis, but kind of lists everybody that's active or was active, and hopefully do it in chronological order, and that the who's, but primarily also for people maybe out there doing it, like Chris identified this 23-year-old who perhaps nobody knows, but there was this website dedicated to Arnis of where these folks are, and that now perhaps some of the unknown who are doing perhaps really good things could be known. So Chris, what do you say on that?
Well, I have a question, and this is this might go back into the previous episode, and I promise I'm not trying to make this debate, but I feel like a good discussion could come about from this. Because if we're going to create a website with all the people who do Modern Arnis, all the people.
Yeah.
Okay. Per the last conversation, there were some people that I think, and Dachu, feel free to clarify things that I've misheard maybe. I went back and watched the episode, and there were some people who, because they didn't necessarily go through the curriculum that you guys were working on in those later times towards the end of Remy's passing, would those people still be considered modernists if we're going to go off what the future, because going back to the question of the future ideology, how do we determine the future of the art if we're not all doing the same thing? Which is what Datu was alluding to in the previous episode of, if we're going to create a future, we should all do relatively the same thing. So then if we're not all following that same curriculum, how do we fall into the same banner?
I don't know if you would need to, I don't know if there would need to be a need. I'm not saying, and I'm not right here, just, I don't know if that would need to be the immediate objective right away. I just think if there was a listing where
I have an idea for
knew, you know, like Danny Terrell suggested, you know, counties, state, region, and all that. But at least people, there would be a website where people could reference. I guess is what I'm trying to, you know.
That idea? I think it's actually a great idea for social media.
Is it me or is Chris breaking up?
He was breaking up a little.
Yes, a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
A little bit.
I just want to make sure it's not my internet.
So Noah, saying like far as this idea of website, far as kind of it doesn't really need to be the who's. I mean, just anybody who's active. So if I'm in you know, whatever, those where I'm at right now in New Mexico, okay, and I wanted to pursue, or I'm out here visiting, and you know, well, I want to check out Modern Arnis. But if I had this website to reference of where folks are, geographically speaking, depending on where folks might be visiting, or maybe they relocated, you know, what do you think about that?
If you could pull it off, I think it'd be pretty cool.
Yeah.
Social media, internet in general, is current day the largest form of publicity. So
Yeah.
I feel like if you were to do that, it would. I mean, I can't say if it would work or not, but don't see the harm in trying.
I think it's worth doing it, and basically what would have to, you know, again, I'm just throwing this out there. I wouldn't know the dynamics or parameters as far as how you would get everybody inclusive, who would be really basic on the back end, plugging in the names and where they're located and such. Datu, is that something you think is tangible or what?
So first of all, I think it is out there and it's not. First of all, what I would do, each organization, which there's probably only 2 or 3 that are active in the States right now, they should have their own website and database. So if you go to our organization, worldmodernists.com or wmrnice.com, you will see in the schools all of our training centers. At one time I used to put all the black belts that we produced on the website. It was just I'm trying to clean up the website and make it more streamlined.
Yeah.
But we have a database that actually shows all the schools in the States, all the schools in Canada, as far as our global affiliates as well. So we've got like 26, 28 schools in the US, or North America. And I've got, I think, 7 to 10 international affiliates off the top of my head. So if you're doing an organization, and this is going to talk about the future, what we need to do, a database, you need to have something out there. If you're going to run an organization, I think that's a thing you need to have. As far as what I would say, okay, so here's talking about the previous conversation. The first thing we would do is put who got black belts. Okay, so we got in a debate once. Brian Zabolinski and I were at an event, and we kind of got into it a little because he didn't know where I was coming from on things. So I come up with these terms and definitions all the time so people know where I'm coming from. I've produced 30 black belts from Remy, all the way from for basic black, first, second, and third degree. You know, they're my black belts, his certification. So what I call them RPC. What does that mean? Remy Price is certified. I brought these people to Remy. They passed his test, and they are certified IMAF black belt or Remy Price's black belts. Boom, end of story. So it doesn't matter the era. It doesn't matter where it came from. If they're Remy Price is certified, and prior to Remy's passing, or prior to his, so I was with him when he got diagnosed in Germany. So that was October 2000. All the black belts prior to that had to test in front of Remy. People didn't have the authority to promote the black belt on their own in modern Arnis, in Remy Prace's modern Arnis, period.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember having a conversation when I was younger, and he said, like, at the time, he goes, not even this person has the authority to promote. Because I say, hey, Professor, what belt do I need to become to be able to promote black belts on my own? No one has that authority, not even Mr. Blank.
It's pretty outlined in, like, under Burton, for instance. Like, I'm able to teach 4 of his modules, and the way it goes is, so generally speaking, you got 4 levels, and then you test for instructorship. So let's say I'm level 4. Well, I can teach level 4 down.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, I had the authority to promote all the way to high brown on my own. Not some people didn't have that authority. Remy didn't have that. I mean, we got to remember, we're talking a person who fled the Philippines in the 70s. Okay, English was not taught out there like the way it is today.
Okay.
He pretty much self-taught himself English. Came over to the States, left everything behind. Barely had the clothes on his back. Didn't bring any family heirlooms, didn't bring the money that was there, was just enough to get him over because his family, he left his kids and wife behind.
Yeah, tough.
So now he's over here trying to teach him. I mean, for all intents and purposes, he's probably illiterate when it came to the English language. You know, he knew how to read a ticket. He had no clue. Like, I was watching an interview talked about before where Remy would do all these back and forth type things. Remy knew how to get places, but he didn't know geography. He was within a 2-hour radius of Philadelphia 11 times in 1 year. And sometimes we're within weeks of each other. I mean, and that's a small drive to go there. It would have been better to spread it out so you wouldn't oversaturate an area. But he didn't know. He just knew.
Yeah, geographically speaking, like he didn't know the effect of that and all that. Which,
when I go to Florida, I know Jacksonville, and I know Orlando, and I know Miami's down there somewhere else. And when everyone mentions everything else, I'm like, okay, whatever.
Here's what I want to do, guys. Since you guys, Chris and Noah, since you guys had time to digest, you got feedback on the show. Has there been any, so to speak, new ideas from you guys from this kind of week that's gone by, as far as what can be done as far as the future, like your guys' age bracket and what have you, and perhaps even younger, to get the word out, get more training into it so it doesn't phase out or die out. So since this week off into present to right now, anything that's been kind of that's you come to mind, maybe through conversations with others post-show, reflection on the show itself by you guys thinking about it. So Chris, anything?
Telling me about who Remy was, and I did some more research. I found one of the old curriculums. This was written by George Mazak, approved by Remy. But just looking at the organization run, this was.
Chris, you're breaking up a bit.
You're breaking up real bad.
Oh, that's not fun.
All right, that was better. Whatever you did there. Okay.
I'll stop moving this chair and hope for the best. Well, I found this old curriculum. And it's approved and adopted by JK, whatever. So I'm looking at how everything is going, looking at how the future of this is going. I truly believe the future of modern art is going as much as possible. It's not just going art, but telling the stories of Professor. So that means telling the stories that I've heard about him, showing him the arts, showing classes whenever I can, doing seminars whenever I can, trying to just spread the word, and not just the art, but the essence of what it was about, and why Remy created, which, off topic. There was a question, a topic brought up about unifying.
Still breaking up a bit.
Yeah.
I'm so angry with my internet right now.
Could it be the fan, maybe, or you're a little too far away from the microphone?
How about now?
I mean, he's right there at the camera.
Try it now, Chris.
Is this better?
Oh, that's a hell of a
definitely
lot
better.
better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
All right.
a lot. Yeah.
You guys can see what color my eyes are now. So, the last week someone brought up unity. I think that is one of the bigger missing pieces of what this art is lacking in. But I also think that the future of this art is going to be more unified. We're having some very big events on, all about unity.
Big
I
events.
What's up?
Big event. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm wearing GM Brian's shirt, and he's having the big camp, I think, in the country in September, October, with I think 7 or 9 original Praesos black belts will be there. My dad, Ray Dinaldo, Brian Slinsky, Dan Anderson, Dieter from Germany, Bombit hopefully will be there from the Philippines, Janet Alf, Roland Rivera, and more people will be there. Gian Chad will be there. So, I mean, I think the unity of the art is happening. I think that it's definitely they want to become more of a family like Remy would have wanted. And I look at what I can do best, and that is I can just keep doing and building, spreading the art and building more students. And the social media has been my biggest asset, and I think my biggest for a millennial thing to say.
Yeah.
But I'm constantly going out there. I'm constantly sharing modern Arnis that I've learned.
Instagram. I'm seeing it.
And as I adapt, growing, that it's been seen. The account has been seen by over 27,000 people.
No, I think you just hit something strong, really significant there. Like you young guys, I think need to be pushing content. I mean, they need to see what you guys are doing. And obviously we're talking to my niece lane now, but I think, yeah, I agree.
I just started with June from June and Paul Show, June from Ballintawak, South Florida, a good friend of mine. We just started the Florida FMA community page where we're going to be promoting FMA, promoting FMA festival, Filipino events, Filipino style things, just to help grow and share the art. And then we're hoping to grow from it, not just stop there, but to continuously grow, because I hate stagnation. I think that's what kills the art. I think the de-evolution can kill the art. I think if adding to it, it can kill the art, because I truly believe that Remy wanted everyone to continue growing. And that means learning from anyone who will show you anything. I've adopted my own version of modern Arnis, still modern Arnis core, because I still base it all off the Tappy Tappy. I base it all off the 6 girl. I base it all off the trapping. So it's only going to continue growing the more we add to it, what my bring to the table and what their students. So there's my 2 cents.
No. Same question to you. Like, again, from the past show, input from folks that watched it, your own thoughts and reflection on it. So what do you think you can do to take initiative or ideas to help perpetuate modern Arnis and grow it with the younger generation?
The last time I mentioned that I'm working with my college to get a group started. And so last week I was talking with the guy in charge of it, and I'm going to get, possibly we're in the works of getting not a club, but actual classes started at the college campus for me to teach. So that's what I'm doing as far as that right now, working towards that. As far as the younger people, social media, promoting through social media is going to get to them, because that's where all the younger people are.
I agree. Yeah. TikTok, that's like, I guess, the new big growing thing. I mean, like, you guys should be, maybe you guys can get a hold of that 23-year-old that Chris brought up, and maybe you guys, who knows, maybe they see the 3 of you doing something together. That would be kind of neat. And then people would see 3 younger guys collectively doing this vid of stuff together. I mean, I'm just speaking out loud,
Right.
But that could be an idea, right?
They'd be taking things a little bit more seriously too.
Exactly. Yeah, 100%. So, because before you guys go, I really wanted the audience to hear what you guys, how you're going to be proactive in growing this art, or where it continues, by more black belts being produced to teach it, this younger generation coming up. Chris, any other thoughts on that?
I think there's a small problem here. That we're talking about.
Here, can you get closer? Because you're breaking up again.
We're talking about what the future should be.
There we go. Yeah.
And I
Or
think
not
that
should be, but what it could be. Let's maybe look at it
what
that
it
way.
could be.
Yeah.
I mean, the future could be anything. The art could die in 10 years. The art could be the biggest thing in the world in 10 years. I think how we make either of those things happen is with the evolution or de-evolution. If we stay in the same spot we're at, the art's going to die. If we don't add anything to the art's going to die. I
think you might be right. Yeah.
The kung fu art. I take this kung fu methodology after I've heard some old kung fu philosophy. You know, we don't hear about the other animals that existed before lion or before tiger and mantis and whatever, because they all died. Because some guy beat that other animal to death, and that animal is no longer important to learn. Is how I think that happened.
Yeah.
The arts that lost are the arts that died off and no one liked anymore. The good thing about modern Arnis is its reputation was there were so many people who did modern Arnis at some point. So many people Remy got to work with. So many people that Remy got to touch and help show. And that's why I don't think, with all due respect, I don't think the school is necessarily what has to happen for us all to be keeping the art alive, because Remy didn't have one. In fact, I was told by multiple sources the reason Remy didn't want a school is because it would limit how many people he could work with. Now, he could leave people in charge of the school. That's not a bad idea. But I truly think Remy's art and the way it was designed is perfect for the seminar circuit, perfect for the nomadic lifestyle, which is, I love that ideology. Remy was a nomad. He didn't have a home. That was so cool. Right. He went to everyone. That's so amazing that he didn't. Now, granted, there's obviously some cons in that lifestyle, but he wanted to go out and show everyone modern Arnis. That's what he did. And that's what I'm doing now. I'm going to every seminar I can go to go show modern Arnis. I'm teaching a small demonstration at a small circle. I am teaching classes every Wednesday. I don't know what else I had planned. There's a bunch of things in my mind. But going out and doing what Remy did is what we should be doing more. Showing and sharing the art and adding what we like and throwing out what doesn't work. Pressure test. If stuff is effective and see what isn't.
No. I think you younger guys need to get together and work together. If you were to ask me, without even knowing modern Arnis and just looking at it from a very generic perspective, I see the more you younger guys can cross-reference, communicate, work together, network, and do that. And then if folks see this like younger group, like that's making their voices being heard, they're being seen. That's just my suggestion. Noah, final thoughts. What say you?
As far as what I'm doing and gonna be doing, I'm like I said, I'm working towards that college class, trying to get that started. All that I really do is I learn. I love to learn. I have that, what people call that white belt mentality, and then I like to share and teach what I've learned. Let's see. I'm not gonna be able to make it to the Balintawak seminar in March, but I will be able to make it to the one in April in Ohio. So if anybody wants to see me at a seminar in person, I'll probably be there.
Noah,
then, yeah.
Can you make it to the Connecticut camp in October, September?
Maybe. I'll have to look into it.
It'll be the September 29th, I believe, first week of October, last week of September. GM Brian Zielinski hosting the biggest modern Arnis instructors ever. There's going to be a bunch of those guys there.
Cool. Text me some details on it, and I'll look into it.
Guru Mean will be there.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna compete in the Arnold World Games, and I think it's in Ohio this year.
Columbus, Ohio.
Yeah.
At the Arnold Classic.
Okay.
So hopefully I can spread through that. I know they have a Filipino martial arts following for that event.
Okay.
I think they do stick sparring during it.
So if they stay true, I used to take fighters down there. They would basically do weak half style fighting. Kicks were included.
Yeah.
So
It's almost like Gathering of the Pack from Dog Brothers in a way.
they
Probably less.
wear way too much armor.
Yeah, less protection.
Yeah. That's what. Yeah. Okay. All right. Here's one again. I'm going to kind of reiterate what I mentioned to you guys before I get the other two guys on. First off, I want to thank you both, Chris and Noah, for coming on twice, and I want to get you guys back on in different aspects. However, though, in regards to the gentleman that Chris mentioned, 23, what do you guys feel about you guys getting networking together and creating and the community seeing this young nucleus coming up and showing stuff and doing stuff and all that, and where other young folks might see it? Do you think you guys could maybe kind of get something going together, work together?
Yeah.
I'd be down. That'd be
awesome.
How about you, Chris? Think you make it happen? Yeah,
Why
get
not?
on the. Yeah. Okay. Well, I hope you guys do it, because I think if you guys do it and you make a really, asserted effort, I think that could resonate with the overall community. Seeing these young guys doing something, I think you guys would get a lot of attention, respect. I think guys would be in complete admiration, like seeing that. So I hope you guys do it. I'm going to kind of follow up. Here's why I'm asking you guys to do this. Because I would do a follow-up show with you young guys and what you're doing. Okay?
Yeah.
Can I make a call out then real quick?
Yeah.
Uh-oh. Call out.
Uh-oh.
Everyone who does Modern Arnis, we'll stick with that one for now. If we do all of FMA, we're going to be here forever. So we go just Modern.
It's going to be a nightmare.
I don't know, man. This might sound bad. Under the age of, or what's a good young age, Dean? I mean,
18.
Teens.
16,
If they're on social media, try to incorporate them.
no. So I want to say, like, if you do Modern Arnis on social media of any type, or whatever, message me, message Noah, figure some stuff out, and this is going to be seen on YouTube, so people can check that out there. Find me, Arnis International on Facebook, Arnis_International on Instagram. Also find me personally. Let's create this movement. This is a shirt that's been sold on 15 billion different martial artists. But why not make a Masters of the Next Generations type mentality? We are going to be the next generation, or the quote unquote torch carry honors, whatever they want to call us. This is where the young guys. Why not we get connected? Let's make something of this. I think it's a great idea.
Please do it, and please keep me in the loop, because, like I said, I will bring all of you back on the show and seeing what you guys accomplished. Okay?
Oh yeah.
So the ball's in your guys' court. All right.
Yep.
All right, man. I want to thank all you guys for coming on. I appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Anytime.
Good job as always. Thanks, guys, and I'll be in touch, Chris.
Later, Dean.
Okay.
Later, Noah.
Adios.
See you.
You guys talk. And let's bring on, folks, you're watching. This is going to kind of be, if you will, a kind of a part two of the same episode, if that makes sense.
Hello, folks.
All right. So,
hey, Ty, I didn't realize he was going to use your picture. I'm sorry. I showed it to Janice. She laughed, but
they were pretty good.
oh, come on. You don't send me something like that and not expect me to use it. I mean, come on.
I was waiting for a bunch of comments, but I didn't see anything.
I mean, if Chad sent me a picture with a raccoon hat on, it's getting in there. I mean, that's just the way it is. You just don't. But I want to welcome you guys. I appreciate you guys coming on. So, folks that are watching, we have Dr. Tim, we got GM Dad, and we got GM Ty. So I appreciate you guys coming on. So for this, we could touch a little on the future, but really for you guys, we're going to kind of segue into, for those who perhaps don't know, or maybe perhaps confused or whatever, and not really fully understand what is Modern Arnis going forward, present, going forward, and for those, again, perhaps that completely sure. So, Guru Chad, what say you on that? What do you, if you were to, somebody were to come up to you and say, hey, I've been hearing about this modernity stuff, and what is it like? How would you answer them? I guess.
Well, I mean, first, I think I'd talk a little bit about how the curriculum changed over time, because definitely back in the 80s, he was teaching a lot more classical Arnis. He was definitely showing a lot more of the Crissata and Palace and Sonkiti, and then the classical striking patterns, down, Ocho Ocho, Banda Banda, Rompida, and we were doing a lot of that stuff. And then later, as things went on in the 90s, we did less and less of that and a lot more tappy-tappy. Everything, became kind of based around tappy-tappy. And then there was a whole, Remy even changed his ranking structure and made a bunch of guys masters of tappy-tappy, because everything was so focused around tappy-tappy at that point. So... Okay. You'd have to talk about, do we want to talk about, everything? Because what I included in my curriculum, at least what my guys learn, is they learn all the old classical Arnis stuff that we did back in the 80s. And they learned all of the tappy-tappy and advanced transitional stuff that we did in the 90s. Because to me, it was, like Remy said, it's all the same. So you gotta, you want to look at where it all comes from. So sometimes those classical Arnis pieces are, perfect segues into, how to move better when you're doing tappy-tappy if you have your classical, fundamental movements. So, that's what I would say is, let's talk about the whole thing from the beginning through, and make sure that we have all those pieces. And I can't remember how many years ago it was now. It's definitely been too long, but Jerome Barber, Dr. Barber, came to one of my winter camps and was a guest teacher. And he, at the camp, he had a book he had recently written, and it's been too many years since I've been through that book. But I remember part of the book is he talked about, I think, he might have referred to them as the pillars of modern Arnis, but he was like, if you're teaching modern Arnis, you're going to have these things. He's like, it doesn't matter, who you learned it from, or, how you learned it. You're going to have these things if you were around modern Arnis long enough. And I can't remember the exact list or whatever, but I remember looking at it and going, oh yeah, you would have to have those things to have been around Remy for a while, and and know what those things are. And block, check, strike, our basic countering, which is also your Sinwali motions, which is also trapping hands. So all of that certainly would have to be included. I would definitely do all the classical entry systems like Crissata and Palace and Sonkiti, just because I loved all that stuff with Remy, all the classic striking patterns, and then working into tappy-tappy or Decadina. I always remembered as Decadina because when we did it back in the 80s, he referred to it as Decadina a lot. And then as we got into the 90s, it became tappy-tappy. But I always thought of tappy-tappy as the piece that he extracted from Blintuak, the counter. I feed you, you come back at me, and I'm going to block that, counter, which to me was tappy-tappy. And then you put it in the whole format of 4 count at long range, moving into mid and close range, and then you have tappy-tappy as part of all of that flow. To me, that's
interesting. That makes sense to me.
All of those pieces are there, and I think everybody got their own flavor from Remy as well, depending upon when they got time with him. I was lucky enough to a couple times get, a couple hotel rooms with Remy. And then there was one time at one of Richard Roy's camps where I remember walking in kind of late and he was like, oh man, there's no more dorm rooms for you. And he's like, I don't know what we're going to do with you. And Remy happened to be standing in the doorway of the gymnasium and he goes, oh, Chad, you will stay with me. He immediately just said, okay, no, this is how we're going to fix this. And any time that you got to stay with Remy, you got, you got hotel room or dorm room lesson. Like, he would show you something. And hotel rooms for me, I got lots of DUMOG, lots of how can you leverage, how can you throw, because we didn't have much space. And unfortunately, I always had questions about staff because I loved Sibot, I loved the staff, and so I would ask him questions about staff, and he would make me go get the brooms or whatever that we could get from the maintenance people and do staff in the hotel room.
Good, I'm not the only one that uses broomsticks. Good, okay.
Yes, you're definitely not the only one. But I mean, I think everybody got those things because they had things they wanted to ask, and so when they got the chance to ask, they asked, and if you had time, more space, then maybe you got to ask questions where you could do a lot of stuff. But I couldn't ask him anything about the classical Arnis because we couldn't move around and we couldn't really do a bunch of that. But we could do tappy, we could do locks, we could do flows and things like that because you can do all that in the hotel room. So I don't know how many flows he did where he would just do different throws and leverages and move me around for 10 minutes. And then I would try to figure out and write down notes on what he just did. So
Okay.
I know everybody had experiences like that, so you're going to have those components that I think are the essential pieces of modern art.
Kind of the quintessential
that everybody's going to do. Yeah. And then you're going to also have the flavors of what you got. And I know a lot of my time with Remy was tainted in the triple threat sense, that it was with Wally and it was with George, especially in Delaware at the claps. And so, I would get small circle jiu-jitsu and Ruku Kempo Kyusho on those weekends as well. And so, all of that stuff plays a role. I've kept in touch with Leon J and try to get to teach with him a couple times a year. And it's amazing to me to talk about old stories and realize how much went on in terms of, Wally and Remy's friends influencing his curriculum as time changed. Because Remy got way better at locks the more time he spent with Wally.
Yeah, makes okay. It's funny. One of the things that came out, I'm going to move on to get Ty's input and then Doctor's. One of the things that came out in the last episode, I trying to recall who. I don't know if it was me or somebody else. Not that matters, but the whole thing with getting, and it doesn't need to be where everybody to the exact crossing the T's and dotting the I's, but some type of somewhat universal curriculum, what are the essentials? What is the bread and butter core things that you want or should have? In other words, and that did come up.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not claiming to know anything from Arnis. Okay, I've seen a bunch by virtue of the interviews. I'm not claiming to be. I'm just coming from an outside lens looking in. I just think that could be instrumental and helpful for the growing future and all that. But same question for you, PG Ty. If somebody were to come up and I guess ask you and whatever, what would your answer be to them based on your tenure and experience with everything?
Right. Yeah. Well, actually, I have one saying that I'll start off with, but then I'll go ahead and expand and probably I'll be saying a lot of things that Chad did. But the simple thing about what I pulled away from training with Remy was his art can be summed up in one statement. His art is the art of I hit you anyway.
Hit you anyway.
So if I'm going to hit you, you stop me, I hit you anyway. If you're going to hit me, I stop you and hit you anyway. It doesn't matter. You're getting hit. It's the art of I hit you anyway.
At the end of the day, you will be getting hit.
But it's funny because he would always do that. But there is a core, and I was lucky enough. Jenny jump started with Eric, and I've said that a million times. But I got to see some of the 80s that I did not see Remy with through Eric, and so all of the stuff that Chad was talking about as far as the striking styles, we call them striking styles, which some people now call the traditionals or whatever. But as all of these things helped I think everyone get to where they were later in the 90s. And I could see that because of having been exposed to it. And I'm sure Chad did the same thing, and Tim as well. But so for me, there's a progression. So part of it is the progression. Part of it is the corpus of materials. Part of it is then digesting all of that and getting the lessons that Remy wanted you to get that work for you, right? So there's this weird thing about, I could pick on, JKD, right? Absorb what is useful. That's great and everything, but you gotta understand what is useful first. So when Remy walks you through all that, right, and you learn from it, that's huge. And I want to say that's an important concept, and it is part of the core. But all of these building blocks get you there, okay? And all of his walkthroughs for you to do those building blocks, and watching him adjust. I remember there's a drill that I keep sharing all the time that no one else ever saw, because what happened, he was working in a small school somewhere. Nobody had trained except for a couple of us, and he was using a different person as a dummy, and they moved funny. So he didn't care. They moved funny. He went with it, and it became a whole new drill. And so when I show people this, they go, "I've never seen that." I'm like, "Well, yeah, you weren't there." So part of it is the adaptability, right? Yeah, but part of it is the adaptability. And in fact, I have my version of that where I build on that. But so you have this corpus of kind of traditional materials. You have this inserts of things that he liked to do. I remember before I even understood what Blintwalk was, and I wouldn't say I'm a Blintwalk person now, but I have a flavor of it now. But he would do something, and I always call it a Blintwalk strike. I didn't know better, but it was something in the middle of Toppy Toppy that he'd pop you to the side, and I found out later it was very similar to Subleague, all nifty stuff. But he would pull things out and synthesize them, and they were his, and I wanted that. Right, I wanted what he pulled together, because he had the experience and he had the pull together of things, and I wanted to get that before I could even figure out what I wanted to do, because he paid those dues and he was willing to share it. So it's the sharing, it's the material. He didn't emphasize, at least when I was with him a whole lot, didn't emphasize a lot of Spadi Daga. He would touch upon it. He didn't at the time like to do a lot of knife, but he would show it from time to time. He liked to see your exploration, so that was good. He did emphasize, as Chad said, the Toppy Toppy in the 90s. The thing I felt bad about that was watching people that only had done that. They didn't understand where stuff was coming from, and it was
like the precursor would lead up to that.
Right, because you got your baby shoes on, you got all of your clothes on, all of your things that went into your house. It's all well and good to enjoy that house, but if you didn't make that house, how do you really understand where all the secret doors are and what are the load bearing pieces and things like that? Because you didn't do the work. So for me, it's that whole spectrum that you're exposed to, that he walks you through, and so that. Yes, there's a lot of curriculum there, so we could go through the striking styles, and a lot of times he wouldn't use names, but some of the ones that Jad mentioned are over there. He loved to do abanico corto, he loved to do abanico double action, 2 different kinds at least. But all of these things are in responses. So when Chad mentioned the block check counter, the counter was when you go into these traditional-ish striking styles and follow-ups and mix them up and have a flow. But the point is they hit you, you stop them, you hit them anyway, and you might do a bunch of them. But the point was you get to learn your positioning. We used to go around someone once we did block check counter. We'd do 1 million strikes and push them and close them off and keep stealing their balance, which he loved. The other is the feel. So enough of the ranting about the feel of the curriculum, but the feel of Remy himself. So when I had a student who was with me at Kung Fu for a while, and then he started doing Arnis at some of the camps with me. Well, me first, and then coming to the camps with me and seeing Remy. And all he had to do was feel Remy once or twice, as much as I would show him what I had. But he'd feel Remy once or twice, and all of a sudden, he started pulling out with a feel and managing your opponent applications that he didn't think of before, from his own material, but before. Not only what Remy showed, but also his material. I also had one of my grandmasters in Kung Fu ask me, "Hey, where'd you get all your Chin Na from?" That's a joint work in Chinese Kung Fu. And I said it was in the forms. And it's true. All of the stuff I showed him was in our Kung Fu forms. However, he goes, no, who were you studying with? and Remy had internalized his piece of, the Dumog and the applications and fighting with, of course, playing with Leon and just doing a laboratory and passing that on to us. So all of those pieces, to me, are part of what is Modern East. So is there a good single answer? I can't give you one. If I wrote down the list of
I just want the audience to
But even if I wrote down the list of curriculum, which I did, I think in the comments in the last one, it would be a start and say, Dean, say you studied with Remy, your version of those would be different, perhaps. But the material was recognizable, and hopefully, if the feel was passed along well, we would be able to see where the connection was, and we're good. That's your Modern East. This is my Modern East. That's cool. And we all have preferences. Like I like, we'll just say purple Arnis. I like Modern East. I like purple Arnis. I love Remy's Modern East. And maybe Dean, I'm going to pick on you because you're here. Dean, your Modern East sucks. Sorry, I don't really like it. But you know what? Keep doing that because
my Modern East does suck.
That's what Remy would want you to do. So that part's cool. So you see what I'm saying? I may have preferences, but that's not a bad thing either, right? I read sci-fi. You read, Lincolnian vampire fiction. I don't know. Whatever you're gonna do. So is that enough rambling? I just wanted to sort of share.
No. Fair enough. Again, it just seems like this void, this like gray area of like, what is it and how is it identified and why there seems to be different versions.
Well, that's an easy answer.
Right.
So go ahead.
That's a very easy answer.
So you're up. Same question.
So
came up to you.
The answer, I'm going to give you the answer why there's so many versions of it. Because, well, first of all, when I talk, I'm going to be talking about the norm, not the exception. Okay? The norm is a lot of people would only see Remy when he came into town. So if Remy came into town once a year, how much material would they actually have? If they went to one camp, if they went to their camp and they hadn't picked up a stick since the previous camp. Ty and I have met so many people who do that. And here's the other thing. So I'm going to go to Chad right now. Chad, I'm going to ask you a question. You made a comment about I want to make sure I'm interpreting what you're saying properly.
Sure.
Because I don't want to put words in your mouth. So did you you said that the Remy wasn't doing the striking styles and the cruzadas and the 6-count drills as much at the end. He was focusing on tappy, right?
Sure.
Why? What were you trying to say? What was your point of that? So are you trying to say that it wasn't part of the art?
I think he tailored his teaching towards that vehicle, later in his life.
Okay.
So sure.
If you look at it's simple. You go to look at the camp test. It had all that material on there. Okay. The problem we run into is people are, I don't want to say they're lazy. They didn't prioritize Remy's teachings. Now we're talking the norm, not the exception. I know someone's going to sit there. I did. Well, I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about Remy had people who were serious, which was in the single percentile, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And then you had a lot of people who just went to supplement their primary art, Modern East.
Was that by virtue of the existing school they were in, whether it be a Kempo? And
yeah, I mean, I'm a karate or taekwondo school. I want some stick defense. I'm going to go talk to this guy because he's a specialist in it. No different than how people went to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, took what they wanted and put it in their curriculum. But there's one difference. Here we go. Would you say Filipino martial arts were here before Remy was here in 75, 74? Do you think Filipino martial arts were here before that?
It's a travesty what BJJ's done. And
that's what I'm. So Filipino martial arts had at least a 20-year head start on Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and now Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu started the same way, add-on program in the school, and now there's dedicated schools all over the place.
Every state,
not for Filipino martial arts. And I think the thing is, people look at Filipino martial arts as something fun to do. They just don't prioritize it, and they don't have faith in it because. Well, here's the problem. What Remy would teach what somebody needed. Now, if the person already had open hand skills, he wasn't going to focus on that element. He was taking a bunch of good martial artists and making them better. But it came from his martial system. Remy Praces Arnis. But a lot of times what he would do to get the word out it was actually Black Belt Magazine that coined the phrase "an art within your art." It was Arnis, an art within your art. It was like, I think, the 1981 Black Belt Magazine issue when he was in there. I don't think he came up with that. I think someone else came up with that idea, and he just ran with it, and it worked really good for him. But the thing here is, when you go around and if you went to the camps, I had people say, well, Rem, I go, what was the last time we did trapping hands in camps? Oh, see, we're not doing trapping hands. I'm like, well, so what are you saying? Are you saying that trapping hands is no longer part of what we do? And I think a lot of times people get twisted. Remy was not there to teach everybody from white to black. He should have been teaching the black belts, and the black belts should have been doing their job and teaching the students. But a lot of times they weren't, and some of them were lazy, and they wouldn't pick up a stick for a year. Literally, Michigan was the top camp, hands down. Longest running camp, most advanced. I met people there. They, hey, Tim, can you run the forums with me? Sure, I'll do the forums with you. And then afterward, I'll go, yeah, I'm testing this week. Oh, really? How much training have you been doing? I haven't picked up a stick since last year's camp. And that person was failed by Remy, and I'm glad they did, because it shows that Remy had it.
Yeah,
wasn't.
but why? Here's my question, though, and I'm not downing what you're saying. I mean, I wasn't there, so but what's the reason why they didn't continue to pick up a stick? Is it because the availability towards him, the lack of frequency, him coming around, or a combination?
I think lack of dedication to what Remy was teaching. It was fun. Okay. It was an add-on, but very. This is going to sound rough, but I think very few people in Remy's following really committed to the art, because I only know of 3 dedicated facilities. It was Rocky Paswick, John Bryant, and myself. While Remy was alive, those are the only 3 schools that I knew of. Rocky was in Detroit. John had the Filipino Karate Academy, where I started. And Remy was a silent partner in that school. And then there was my school. Now, there was a bunch of programs out there, like Michael Donovan, who came from Philly and moved up to London, Ontario. He had half Arnis, half Kempo. Michael Bates had a good percentage of his Raikyuu Kempo and modern Arnis. And I've seen a bunch of clubs that would have like 30%. But at the end of the day, it was their karate that was running their schools. And because Remy didn't do this, Remy didn't know how to, so going back to what Chris said about seminars, Remy had dedicated facilities in the Philippines. He had his own gym. He taught in the school systems. He taught in the military. He taught for the police. He had dedicated things. He came over here in 1975. So you had lingering stuff of World War II towards Asians, Korea, and Vietnam. Now, and back then, no one knew what the hell a Filipino was. They just all Asians look alike, So him doing a regular job wasn't going to fly, especially when you consider it back then in the day. Remy could make 2-3 months worth of money in one day.
Right.
So he knew how to teach seminars because he was sponsored by the government to travel the world to teach seminars. So he went with what he could do. I don't think he could have. I really don't think he could have run a business, the school business here, because he moved here and he didn't know how things work in the States. Go ahead, Ty.
I was going to say, just on top of that, I think the other thing that I noticed was that people were, a lot of people were, senior instructors or advanced in other styles when they take this. So they had a primary kind of focus there, and extra, depending on how you look at it, is going to always feel extra, right? It's going to be secondary, perhaps. So it's a commitment thing. But I would just say, I think that because of the nature of things, what I got a feel of some people when they didn't pick up a stick was they thought that what they saw in the last camp, I'm not saying everybody, but often it came up that people saw at the last camp, they were not cognizant that there was more to it than that.
Mm-hmm.
So what is there to work on, right? I didn't know there was more.
They didn't see the future.
And we had people never taking notes. I took, gosh, I think Chad did this too. We had 20 pages of note for a camp, and you'd have to go.
Oh my God. I have so many spiral bound notebooks in boxes.
Yep.
Like, it's horrible.
So Chad,
and I would add to that and say that when I was traveling around, in my college days, gone to as many of these seminars in different places that Remy was doing, that was my impression as well, is that the people that I would see in this region, that's the only time I would see them was when I was at that seminar. And then I would go to the other region and I'd see another group of people, but I wouldn't see them at the other, they didn't really travel and go to other places. And I started realizing, like, oh, I'm like the only person who's showing up in like 3 states, and then I started running into other people who were kind of doing the same thing, where, they were hitting as many of them as possible. And I was like, oh, okay, so there's a bunch of different groups of people. Some of these people are just coming, when he's in their neighborhood. And then, a lot of us were gone way out of our neighborhood to go train. I mean, I was gone to college in Philly at the time, and I would see him in Maryland, Virginia, anywhere that I could catch him, and then all the way up to Boston for Richard Roy's summer camp, places in, New England, Connecticut, so he was all over, and I tried to catch him wherever I could.
Philly is actually pretty good because within 2 hours you can be in like 4 states.
Yep.
Unfortunately, for me to go out, Philadelphia, that's a 6-hour. I would still go. I mean, I was go to Chaz Terry's Triple Threat. I was up and down the coast, and the Midwest and Texas and stuff. Actually, that's where Ty and I met. But the quantity of people was less than 10%. Now there was a trend at the end where a lot of the more serious people would go to all the camps. The people that would be the ones, the ones that became the Masters of Tappy Tappy, which, well, we'll talk about that's another conversation. But there was a handful of people that traveled. But when you look at the numbers that did stuff with Remy, it was probably less than 10% that was serious. I mean, once again, how many Filipino styles out there don't teach open hand combatives? I mean, aggressive. I'm not saying, hey, this number one swing could be a concussive slap but I'm talking who teaches punching, kicking, trapping, locking, throwing. Most and this ties into the last one because we never really finished that. For the future, you need to be able to teach kids. And you also need to have a standalone, not a complete. I think Balint walk. I love my Balint walk. I've been doing it over for 20 years. And Remy opened the door for me to do that with Ted Buat. So Balint walk is complete in that field of study, but is not a standalone system. You cannot run a school in Balint walk. Matter of fact, I don't know of any Balint walk schools. I know schools that offer Balint walk, but I don't know of a Balint walk school.
Right. I just want to back up, though, Datu. I just want to back up to something that kind of came out from you and PG Ty. And I guess what I'm wondering is there was alluded to that some of these folks were just darn right lazy. Okay. The guys below obviously was taking notes and all that. But what PJ Ty mentioned, how perhaps if the student couldn't see into the future, maybe in other words, like, okay, they got this stuff at the camp was stick work. Okay, whatever it was, tappy tappy, some variations of Sinawali, what have you. But if they didn't see into the future or didn't know where to look and all that, thus didn't take it serious, thus didn't pick the stick up and all that, was it because they're lazy, or was it because there wasn't a future picture put in front of them? And I'm not saying I'm right. I'm playing devil's advocate here and all that. Is there any truth to that? Or I guess maybe truth's not the right word, but where that could have been maybe an issue with those students who perhaps didn't pick up the stick in the year?
Well, let me go first on this one. I think the problem is, and even today, people learn by rote. Okay. So I left my instructor, and Remy reached out to me to become his personal student because he didn't want to lose me. Okay. So I was alone. I had nobody to tell me what I couldn't do. I thought about things. I took notes. I showed him stuff. I go, what do you think about this? If he liked it, he had me do it a bunch of times, and sometimes he would show what I came up with. If he didn't like it, no, don't do this because you can, and he'll show me something better. So it was a win-win, but he knew I was doing my work. But I wasn't brought up in that traditional thing about not thinking. And I think the problem is too many people are, and I see it today too. It's monkey see, monkey do. It's follow the leader, Simon says, or Sensei says, or Guru says. But Remy encouraged that. But if you had decades of that kind of conditioning, I would show. I mean, listen, Ty and I heard this a lot because we compare our notes. I really don't. I only met. We may have been at the same events, but I didn't have a dialogue with Chad until that one event at Michael Bates's when Ty got inducted in the Hall of Fame. I think that was the first time we actually talked. So Ty and I always compare notes, and when you would do something that was different, people would say, "I never saw Remy do that." And what I should have asked him at the time was saying, "Are you calling me a liar, or are you like, hey, I don't get that. Can you show me more? Because I missed it." Because every time I saw Remy, I learned something new. So it always makes me wonder, what did I miss?
Every time.
And by no means am I saying it was, I guess what I'm saying is I'm trying to, and again, I'm just playing neutral here. I'm just trying to see, it just struck me like,
I think
like you mentioned these people not picking up a stick for a damn year. And I'm just wondering, like Ty mentioned, because maybe they didn't know they should be doing this, or maybe they didn't know they should be doing this, and they're going to find stuff by
if
practicing.
If you're doing martial arts, you should know you should be practicing.
Artists, man. Come on, you got to practice.
Right.
That's the first thing you learn.
Right. I think it's almost like
but something was missing there.
Lesson.
Right. I think it's almost like a personal trainer thing, right? So you go, there's a brand new personal trainer who's going to show you maybe, I don't know, rope swinging or kettlebells, right? Or those big clubs, right?
By the way, I'm not.
So you go do the Indian club class with him, and he's going to come next year, and he's like, "Oh, cool, I tried that Indian clubs things." And then if you didn't keep doing it, you didn't have your trainer walking you through it, and you don't think you know well enough to keep working on it. So I think it's partly they didn't know where else to look. They partly didn't know they should, because here's the other thing that happened. If you only went to the camps, you saw one piece of the puzzle. So I mean, actually sneak in a thing that Danny Terrell asked. It sounds like he didn't teach a system or curriculum. When he's teaching the seminar or the camp mode, there's a specific mode there to get certain concepts, make those connections, and bring people in, which is a different kind of teaching than developing from the ground up. Okay. If that makes sense.
So there's two types of events we have out there. There's one that retain and others that recruit.
Okay.
So like the event that Chad does is a great retention event. An event that Ty does is a great retention event where a bunch of Filipino martial artists get together. They have a good time.
I can speak on Chad's. It's a wonderful.
Yeah, it's a great retention.
Ty has not invited me, so I can't speak on people.
but we need events that will recruit new people, and that's why it's very important to teach outside of the FMA community. Because so listen, I go down, I teach at Chad's camp. Okay. Is that going to bring any more people to FMA? I might get people might sit there and say, "Oh, I like what you're doing, Tim. Can I talk to you more about that inside?" Great, but we need to get out. Like Ty, I got into the martial arts symposium. Then Ty got in the martial arts symposium with me. I got in the Saratoga Martial Arts Festival. Ty also got in there, and now we're getting more and more of our people in these events that are multi-style events, non-Filipino, and we're picking up schools.
Yeah, I got a bunch of those events this year.
That's
always super cool.
But when you just teach, and like I said, I go up to Toronto and teach at Pintados' event, which is all Filipino stuff. I've done a whole bunch of these things. It's cool and all, and I like being part of the community. Don't get me wrong, because I'm not trying to say it in a bad way, but I'm concerned. I would much more prefer to teach events that recruit more people to the FMA, even if it's not my system of FMA. But if I inspire people, if I inspire somebody and they say, "Hey, I want to do this. Who's by me?" Well, there's a Bikini Tirshit club there. Go train there. Well, you don't want me to go do Modern Ace? Of course I want you to do Modern Ace, but there's nothing there. So only either. But you got so-and-so here, train with them. They can get you going. And if you want to do what I'm doing later, come talk to me.
Yeah, I think when you're doing the
I
multi-style
have a question here.
Oh,
I'm sorry. Yeah, and then by all means, I'm going to get you, PGT. I want you guys each to answer this, and
Sure.
I'll give my answer outside looking in just by virtue of doing the shows and nothing else, because I never experienced Remy and never took it as a program.
Mhm.
Okay, so the question is from Paulo, and I'll post it. What was Remy's biggest flaw as an instructor? No sugarcoating. So let's start with you, Guru Chad. In your opinion, if he even had a flaw, in your opinion, what was his biggest flaw?
I mean, I don't know if I'd call it a flaw, but I think he, I think it was a way that he connected with everybody. He made everybody feel special, which is kind of impossible, but he did. And when he was talking to you and he would address you, and I mean, I saw it a million times where he would be in a gymnasium and he would see somebody across the gymnasium and he had maybe met them once or twice at a camp, and he would say like, "Hey, George," and you're just like, how does he know this guy's name? To me that, there's a little bit of a flaw in that, in the sense of, you know that you weren't the special person all the time, but he made you feel that way. So to me, that would have been the only thing I would say, because there certainly wasn't any flaws in his technical prowess and
his technical precision.
I mean, he only taught visually, and as I've gone through a lot of teacher training and things like that, and learned about visual, kinesthetic, and auditory learning, his auditory was this: you do this, you will do this with me, this, everything is this. So your auditory is out the window. If you learned auditory, you didn't get it. You had to be able to visualize it. And I'm a kinesthetic learner, and my secondary is visual, so I could watch it and get it. But 9 times out of 10, you would see me shoot my hand up so that he would demonstrate on me, because if I felt him do it on me, then I knew what it was. I knew how to do it. And so, that was probably the only thing teaching wise, was that he was a visual teacher. So if you could learn that way, then that's what you got. But if you were kinesthetic or auditory, you either had to step up and get thrown, or figure it out.
Okay, no. Same question to you, PG Ty. Again, if there was a flaw or something else, whatever you.
So I do have one I want to mention that I think is worth mentioning, but I wanted to tail on for Jim Chad, if that's okay. And so with that, making everybody special, the side effect is that he was almost too soft, right? You could do anything and you might think it's okay, except that there's a cultural disconnect there. So he was very, very careful to not hurt anybody's feelings. And if you didn't catch that because you're looking for harsher clues, you didn't realize how badly you were doing something. So my favorite one is the thing, hey, you're doing something and I'm accidentally make a mistake, or you do it wrong, or maybe you insert something, hey, look at me. And he would go, you could do that. And if he didn't do anything after that, that means you better not keep doing that. If he went with it and he maybe had a discussion and exploration, then yeah, okay, that's great. But he would stop it there because he didn't want to say a bad thing. So that's sort of along those lines. So if and I see Chad smiling there, so hopefully that resonates. But what I was going to say is that the other aspect, and probably stealing some of Tim's, I would imagine. So English. So
you bastard.
His English wasn't so good, and that's why everything was. That's why everything was you do this or do whatever. And I don't know about you, a lot of people love to have an anchor to make sure they get something. So we all had different terminology. So he wasn't very specific on the language information. He'd show you, you'd feel it, or you'd get whatever it takes for you to get it. But the link between the various people getting the same things was not there because of that lack, if that makes sense.
Okay. Same question, Datu. Thank you.
No, he took my answers because they're both. It's the same. It's a culture. Okay. And part of it is us too. We didn't know Filipinos, and we didn't know their culture. Once again, when we talk about this, anyone who's watching now doesn't know what if you're. Last week, people said what Remy did, and I was going to call him on it, but at the end of the day, the person changed what they said. You can't tell me what Remy did if you never met Remy, okay? And you can't judge him on the actions back in the day when you don't know what the things we were doing, you know. So we didn't know about Filipinos. I know Remy more now than I ever have, and that's because I've been going to the Philippines. For years, I've been going to Toronto to get exposed to Filipino culture. And then I started going to the Philippines to get immersed in the culture. I didn't learn martial arts there. For what I learned over there, it wasn't worth the trip. Martial art wise, cultural, whole nother thing. Ty started learning the language. He's filled in some of the blanks for me because some of the things that Remy said is his language directly translated. What was what is it?
Oh, nah means all.
No, but do better, more better.
Like, oh yeah. Oh, that yeah. But no, for me, since you just invited me in this statement, for me, it wasn't that I didn't know Filipinos. Actually, for me, it was nostalgic or for coming home because there was a lot of similarities to the feel and how people interacted and the cultural connection from me living in Malaysia before I came back to the States and trained with Remy. So for me, that was one of the extra bonus connections. And actually, I understood a lot of how he interacted. So when he told me that I was special, I took that as a compliment. I didn't think I was special. So I was, family in that inclusive way, but I didn't make anything of it because I knew what he meant because I'd been over there, lived there for 3 years growing up in high school.
Like the two things I would say is language, and that's because of how he came over. And I think a lot of times when Remy would talk to somebody, they never asked the question multiple times. It was just a one-off. And having dealt with Filipino instructors, I've asked the questions multiple times after time has gone by, and I get a different answer every time because they're beginning to understand what I'm truly asking. The other thing is the cultural thing. Filipinos will avoid controversy. They don't like that emotional turmoil. And a lot of people, I think, have took advantage of Remy's situation. I think Remy would say, like when Ty said, like, "Oh, you could do that." Yeah, you could do that, but it was also saying you really shouldn't. And so a lot of time, I mean, I remember the one time specifically, Remy said, "Oh, Tim, you could do that." No, stop that shit with me. You tell me what it's supposed to be, because I was OC. I wanted it to be what it was supposed to be. I don't want to say, well, you could also do that, because I understood that was a code of, it was him trying to be polite.
Yeah.
I mean, he lived out of a suitcase. He was poorer than the Philippines. He did what he needed to do to protect that income. He also, and part of that was being nice and making everyone feel special. I don't want to say it wasn't genuine, but there's a lot of different factors. Mm-hmm. And his way of encouraging people, could just as easily be saying, yeah, you could do that as well. And I remember the first time I was in Germany and there was two women working out and they missed it up. I go, well, you could do that too. And then Dieter comes running over 999 and corrects everything. I'm like, okay, my German side identifies with that. I would have preferred to do it the right way, but I'm trying to have people, they're getting frustrated. Mm-hmm. And I was trying to encourage them. And I understood now that the more and more I taught with Remy, okay, that I realized that there's an element of that. And sometimes we say things to help people through things, and maybe the message may have gotten messed up. And I think those two things, between the non-controversial, confrontational, and the lack of the language, but I mean, that's not Remy's fault. It's just the way, I mean, he came over as an adult. He didn't come over as a kid. Mm-hmm. And I have Filipino friends in Toronto that I go up and visit quite often, and they were here for 20, 30 years, and they're still using the language incorrectly, but it's close, and I know what they mean, and I don't call bullshit on it. But, it's like, yeah, you'd actually be better to say this, because they're translating in their native language, and sometimes it's just lost in translation, and that created problems in what we do.
Okay. So, and then just fun. Yeah, that's funny. I heard that from David Gould a couple of times when
That's interesting.
And I knew he was just being nice and saying, I don't ever want to see that again. But interesting, yes.
It kind of notes of Danny Kruger.
But okay, so all right. And again, I'll just give, and again, just by virtue of doing the shows, talking to you guys, interviews, and
teaching together.
I'm just basing on this, and my thing would be, and I'm saying this because when I look towards the future, like the future growth, the future coming up, and that lack of, which is kind of come up, is that kind of written based curriculum and all that. And I'm not saying essential, I'm not saying it's important, but I'm saying if I was to give a constructive criticism towards them, I would say, like, there doesn't seem to be this unified, or just where somebody could articulate regardless of where you are geographically speaking and all that. And that's all. And I could be totally wrong in this regard. And if
You're wrong,
apology.
You're wrong.
Thank you.
For me,
because there was a curriculum.
Yeah.
It was called the camp test.
Yep.
See, the whole thing is because we talked about
it was all
before.
listed through there.
I remember Bruce on one of his early shows. He said there is no written curriculum. I go, if you're saying a belted curriculum, there was not an established organizational wide one. We were in negotiations of me taking my curriculum and putting it in place. Okay. I was the Can-Am director of the organization. I was the chief forms instructor of the organization. I was doing these things, and Professor actually, Lori was helping out at the time, Lori Harwood, and she was tasked to look at doing something with curriculum. And I said, and she came to me, and I'm like, listen, just tell Remy, I'd be more than happy to do it. I just want a byline on it. That's all. But even if you didn't do that, all you had to do is look at the camp test, because here's the thing.
Can I just ask one question?
Yes.
Does everybody know that okay, the camp test? And maybe they do.
If they're black belts from Remy, they should be.
If they got a black belt from Remy, there's a whole list of things that you had to be able to do at a reasonable level that would get you black. So in some sense, that's a curriculum black. You could argue that, color, the order of the colors of what goes where.
Okay.
Sometimes you got that a significant amount of time before you tested black, and sometimes you got that on like the day or weekend of your black belt test.
But it's somewhat universally known. So this younger group, would somebody be able to share that with them? Hey, so if a younger guy is coming up,
as soon as you got the list, you immediately went through the process of checking things off on the list and being like, I think I have this. Okay, I got this. Okay. And then anything that you couldn't check off, you immediately started scrambling around the gymnasium, finding black belts, going, hey, what is this? You show me this real quick. And and they would show you, and you'd be like, "Oh, I know that, but I just didn't know that was the name of it."
Yeah, my concern is just the younger people. Would they know this? Or
so the second gen,
like Ty said, if you got a black belt, you got that list.
Yeah. Well, let me rephrase it. No, if you were a Remy Prices certified black belt, you had that list.
Oh, here we go. Yep. Danny's coach is asking the same
I'm going to say most likely no, and this is the reason why I'm going to say most likely no, because the head instructor would have had to done their work. And we already talked about instructors who would only go once a year. Right. Or instructors who, there is so much more open hand combatives in what Remy teaches than people give us credit for. But when you go to a Kempo school or a Taekwondo school or karate school, he doesn't want you to teach punching and kicking. They want you to teach the things that he doesn't already do. When he teaches on a tour, he teaches the theme like a band. So if Led Zeppelin didn't play Stairway, God forbid, do you think they would think that Stairway is no longer part of their career? Of course Stairway's there, but they have to make room for new stuff. And Remy did the same thing. And I bet you, okay, Burton, you've seen Burton a whole bunch of times. Does he teach the same thing every time?
No, it's based on what the instructor requests of him. And
so everyone's got to do their work and get their fundamentals. And if they're not doing that or not passing it on, that's bad on them. Unfortunately, because only probably, well, I said it's less than 10% actually took this seriously. Mm-hmm. They probably didn't get that. Yeah,
we got it here. Okay, the tests were heard. I would say. Okay, here we go. So here's something. I'll read it.
Paolo's question. Yeah.
So how do you know they legitimately passed test versus him wanting to retain you,
Mhm.
For obviously monetary
You can't
reasons,
say
or
that. You can say that about anything. I mean,
can.
okay. I mean, I can say the same. Did you really pass your test, Paulo, or was it to help out Jared's organization? And I'm not saying that's the case because I know from what I know of Jared, he wouldn't do that. But you just can't throw that out there.
Well,
And if the test is, here we go. So listen, Modern Arnis, there's two tracks that I look at. There's what Remy taught. There's the material source material he drew from, and then the synthesis that other people made. So there's a lot of different expressions. When you do the art within your art, it all looks different. But when we were together, we all did the same fundamentals. Everyone was doing block check counter. Everyone was
I hear
doing
you, and I appreciate that. I don't know collectively if everybody's seeing that.
Right.
That's
and the thing here is when it talks to rank, and this is going to Paulo. Part of the program was the art within your art, which means your primary art and your ability in that goes towards your rank.
okay.
I mean, you come in. So when you got into Jeet Kune Do, how many years of training? When you got with Burton, how many years of training did you already have?
My Jeet Kune Do didn't come from Burton. It actually came from Chris Smith, and then up to there, I had. I went from Taekwondo to Jeet Kune Do.
Okay, so you didn't have to learn how to punch and kick, probably. You already
when I went to Burton, fair enough. Correct. Yeah.
So you already had a lot of the building blocks from another art.
Gotcha.
Or from another program. So Remy, I mean, listen, if martial arts is supposed to be an educational thing, then it's a lot like going to college, whether you go for multiple degrees or switch degrees. There are certain things that are universal that'll transfer for every field of study, but then there's the specialty things. You get your bachelor's degree, and you still do your fundamentals, and then you go or go to military. You do soldering is soldering. Everyone goes to the same damn boot camp. But then they go into their specific schools that they're focusing on. So, So I see a lot of times what Remy looked as overall ability. Oh, this guy's moving very good. Is it? Yeah. And I would have personally, have held a higher standard, and I do, because I would want, if you're going to use the word modern Arnis, and Arnis is in there, I'd want a higher percentage of their ability focusing on the Arnis and less on their primary art.
But just see, and here's again, because I'm gonna have to go soon. I have no problem bringing you guys back on. And something I want you guys to think about, because I do want to bring all three of you back on part two. And what I want to think about, or you guys to think about, and the theme of the show is the perception. In other words, I think there's a perception of how people view modern Arnis. Okay. Then I think there's people within modern Arnis that are just misinformed, and I'm basing this on conversations with you guys. I'm not basing this because I had tenure with with jam presses, or I took modern Arnis. Far from it.
I agree with you 100%.
Okay, so I would like to do another show basically on the perception and the misconceptions from within. How's that sound?
I mean, we could do that. I don't know how much different it would be with it. I mean, here's the problem. A lot of people, in my opinion, even some of the luminaries, don't really know what they don't know. And
that's what the show could be. So, Guru Chat, would that interest you?
Like Tim just said, I don't know how much different it would be than what we're doing at the moment.
Okay, fair enough. No, if you guys don't think it's justified, then yeah, I don't want to just reiterate.
I think a great question would be to try to get as many of us together and clarify what are those fundamental pieces.
Would you guys come back on and do an episode?
Maybe we create a list, and of course we all can't get with everybody's program, but we can certainly all get with the list of fundamentals and say, well, yeah, we are all doing these fundamentals, and then we all have our flavors.
How about that? Would you guys be willing to come back in there with kind of identifying the core essentials, and then from the core essentials, where your flavors kind of came into it? Is that of interest?
Oh my God!
That
I mean,
too.
you could. I wanted to finish
Maybe-
one thing. I wanted to finish one thing on Paolo's question about how do you know.
Okay.
So, yes, there's the whole thing about that's a legitimate question for everybody, but I think, like anything else,
I've
you
missed
have to
that.
be honest with yourself, and you have to have done the work, and you will know if you're honest. You will know if you did your work or not. The other thing is most times people will have So here's one thing you should know about the rank test at camp. For the longest time, the rank tests were not very expensive, right? $30 or so for a black belt even.
Yeah.
So he wasn't asking you to test to make more money. He might have been doing it to encourage you, but he had to look out for all the people that are already black belts, and he wouldn't ask that if it wasn't at least on the table. So do your work, you get asked, and there's a money that's not a thing. So it's not as obvious. And then I will say other things, just like any other art, there are other things that go into when you might be asked to test or pass, right? So there could be political things, there could be hosting camps. And I'm not saying those are singular. What I'm saying, there's contributing factors that will go in like any other art. So, I mean, it's the same. However, I just wanted people to know that one of the things, he wasn't doing it for money. And two, you were coming to the camps anyway. So if he kept seeing you coming back and back again, if he gives you more rank, that's not what's getting you to come back. You're getting there because he knows you're coming back again and again.
Paolo,
People
I'm going to answer
definitely
Paolo's
failed,
that last one. Well,
People failed,
the
right?
guy from Illinois who hadn't picked up a stick in a year failed.
Yes.
And
Failed.
wait for it, he even failed his own girlfriend.
Yep. We've seen people fail.
I've so he failed his own girlfriend.
All right, fair enough. Okay. Okay.
So I was there when that one went down.
Right.
And the thing here is there's definitely people who didn't pass tests.
Who am I thinking about?
There was also people that were told, hey,
Here's the thing.
you need to not test this time, maybe next time. So that's another
Here's
kind
the
of
thing,
fail.
guys. We don't have to do, again, it seemed like things were going unfair. We don't have to do another one. If you guys think you covered the good enough stuff here as far as what is modern knees, fair enough. We don't have to,
I think, so remember I started a list last time. We said the traditional striker styles. So Polis Polis, Cruzada, Bandi Banda, Rompida, Taas Baba, up down, right? All of these kinds of things. You've got the abanicos. So you got that. You got the striking styles. You got the disarms. You got the counters. You got the 6 count drill and those kinds of things. You've got Tapi Tapi. You got those things. You got the 3 major Sinawalis, right?
Attack, block check, counter, obstruction removal.
Block check, counter, right?
All the locks and controls.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And then if you look at your forms, because forms are part of it, if you deconstruct your forms, you have all your punching and kicking.
Yep, you got your applications, and there's another thing, right? As Chad said last time, empty hand translation to everything we do, or cross translation.
Translation is one of the biggest things,
Yep.
and it's one of the things I see absent in a lot of other FMA systems. It's like Remy made us translate everything.
Yep.
You said, okay, well now what if you don't have a stick?
That's a great point.
Okay, we'd be doing double stick, and he'd say, okay, drop your sticks. What if this punch is coming at you? And he would always translate everything. This year at my winter camp, Brian Zelowinski surprised the shit out of me. He didn't tell me he was coming to Florida, and on the 3rd day, Bruce Chu walks up to me and says, I don't feel like teaching my class today, so I'm not going to. And then he turns, and Brian's standing there. And so Brian took over and taught his class. He taught a very simple single Sinwali class, but he showed how you can apply it to doing wrist, elbow, shoulder locks on the inside or outside of the arm. And it was a simple but profound class that just shows you that it's all about, especially for modern Arnis, it's all about translation. If you can't translate it, then that's one of the main things. I look at modern Arnis people, and if they can do the weapon stuff, but they can't translate to empty hands, there's a problem.
They might not be getting the gist of truly what he wanted or what they should have. Okay.
And at the lower levels of the art, I mean, okay, so Remy transitioned from the beginning part, which is teaching us good self-defense, and really post black belt teaching us how to become more of a stick fighter if people hung around. I mean, a lot of people did everything because, when you went to the camp, when you went to seminars and camps, there were more rotating curriculum programs. Everyone did everything, whatever was being taught. But at the end of the day, his focus was teaching us how to defend ourselves. And the thing here is when everyone's grabbing for a knife, not every situation merits grabbing a knife, and it doesn't mean you can deploy it. Or I need to do a stick thing. Well, what if you don't have a stick?
One of the things that I'll hedge whenever you say, hey, list the curriculum, we could list it, but one of the things you're going to miss is all of the bridging drills and exercises that you have a web connecting everything to everything else.
Connecting the dots. I got you.
Yes, that I don't know how to put on a curriculum. I can say some of those things in a Wally boxing. That's one.
If you put all the techniques up on a board, you'd see a whole bunch of a spider web, because this would intersect with this. Most of the stuff we did is this. I mean, some things are very specific to a tool or to a scenario. There's definitely scenario applications very specific to this situation. But the bulk of what we do is all interwoven. So it's more of a spider web than a
no, I can appreciate that. I can definitely appreciate that. But
that's my answer to Danny's earlier question, because I said I'm gonna have to think about that. But I guess that is my answer to Danny's. He's like, is there something that's specific to modern practitioner?
Gotcha.
Translation
with the specifics to help you do that, not just talking about it.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. The ability to translate.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the thing that people misunderstand, because a lot of times I talk about this and people don't listen to what I'm saying. We should have our fundamentals always all being the same coming up. The application is different. Then that's the whole thing. And sometimes I don't think what Remy used to do and what he did later was based on people's doing stuff. And one of the things, like, he used to do stuff against static punches, the old karate one-step punch. That's what everyone was doing. And he adapted his teaching methodology to something that people were confident with.
Traditional schools he was in.
So we just did it this weekend. I'm doing the trapping 1, 2, 3, the block check counter, the open hand interpretation, block check counters, trapping hands. And I sat there and go, punches are going to be there. It's going to go out and back. That's 2 movements. How am I going to do 1, 2, 3 when the hand's doing a piston-like motion? Well, what I do is, like, we do it against a grab, because the hand stays out for. And we have different traps for different things, where Sinwali boxing is all about that more of a combative trapping situation. But so I'm using a teaching approach, but I'm still using the same fundamentals, the same skills, the same techniques, and just a different application of what we're doing. And I think that's the problem, where a lot of people are thinking, so Ty mentioned about he wanted what Remy did. So when I see modern Arnis, I look at what Remy did, and I see what a lot of people are, like the art within your arters, the other portion, which is more than half. They are a perfect example of what the synthesis can produce.
Okay.
But it's not a good representation of what Remy was doing. And I don't think that, I think when we talk about that, that's when things get mixed up.
Okay. Well, hey, I want to appreciate you guys doing this.
Did you freeze?
If you guys think of something that should be further expounded on or clarified or continued, I'd be more than happy to bring you 3 back on. So if there's something you think that needs further addressing and all that, I'd be more than happy to do it. You guys obviously know how to get a hold of me. You let me know. But I appreciate you guys coming on and doing this. The comments, there was a ton of them. I think people thoroughly enjoyed this.
What's everybody's next event? Ty, what are you teaching at next?
So I've got my April thing, April 8th, my spring FMA thing, and everybody's getting a little tchotchke thing that I'm printing out. So
nice. Tim?
I am teaching in Canada next weekend.
And
Ontario.
2 weeks. I'm at Fort Myers, Dan Lohman's camp.
Good. Give Dan a hug for me.
I will.
Awesome. But
indeed.
All right, guys. Appreciate you guys.
Thank you, sir.
And, definitely let me know. Again, more than happy to bring you guys back on if you think there's certain things we could again continue on or expand on. Okay.
That was a good reminiscing. Thank you for the opportunity.
Great to see you, gentlemen.
Yeah, Chad.
Anytime. All right, guys. You take care. Thanks again, Guru Chad, for coming on. Thank you, Datu. Be in touch. All right, folks, thank you all that jumped in. That was, I thought, pretty good and informative. So this is kind of wrapping up. I only think I got one more left, and I'm will be reducing my role significantly. But I will be doing 1 or 2 a month, and but after February, you probably won't. I'm not sure the next time when you'll see me. But again, Tom's gonna be doing great interviews. He always has. Brian's gonna be helping him, and again, I still will be doing 1 or 2. I'm not going to disappear off the face of the earth. All right, where everybody's wondering about. Okay, but again, thank you all that jumped in, commented, asked questions, and we'll see you next time. I think I could be doing one. Trying if I get snowed in. It's not looking good going back to Connecticut. Might be getting stuck in Denver. I shouldn't even be talking about it. But at any rate, if I get back in time, hopefully maybe one Tuesday night before March kicks in, I'm open. So yeah, please give my regards to Brian and Rose. Regards. Hey, Coach Danny. From Coach Danny. All right, I definitely will. All right, folks, take care.